Hello and welcome to Who Watches the World Cup. It's been a tough year, Dave, for all of us. The pandemic has meant that people have lost family, friends, loved ones, relationships. The whole world has frankly been turned upside down. But there was one glimmer of hope for all Europeans. Well, not all of them, because some of them didn't qualify. But for the Europeans that qualified, there was one glimmer of hope. And that was the Euros. Euro 2020, delayed by a year. It's finally been here. We're a week into the tournament now, at this point. But what happens when that beautiful sport is corrupted by the seedy, disgusting world of politics? That's what we're here to discuss today. A week into the tournament, how are you feeling about it?
I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, we haven't watched every game, but
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, we've been pretty much doing 3 games a day for a week. Obviously, your girlfriend Laura is not best pleased about that situation. She has been saying quite evidently, "Can Dom please leave this house so that we can do something except for watch football," which is fair enough. But you've enjoyed the week up to this point.
Yeah, definitely. It's been great to watch so much football and for so many of the games to be really genuinely exciting. And it's not been a drab affair by any means. And some games, I think we mentioned before, where we didn't really think that we had any stake in. Like the Holland versus Ukraine game was just so exciting. And when Ukraine scored their goals, we were up on our feet.
Yeah.
Like we had with as much exuberance and fandom as we had when we watched Wales and when we've watched England. So yeah, it's been really nice.
Yeah.
just to be completely swept up in this amazing kind of experience.
Yes, yeah, I've really enjoyed it as well. But before we get into Group E, I wanted to touch on some of the controversies that we've had up to this point. Because when we did the World Cup series back in, 2018, we did a specific episode about a controversy between Switzerland and Serbia. I don't know how much of that you remember or exactly what happened. We touched on it a little bit in a previous one of these, but do you remember what happened in that World Cup?
Yeah, that was around Switzerland when they scored their goals. Jordan Shaqiri and Granit Xhaka, who have Albanian and Kosovan descent, ran to the Serbian supporters and formed their hands in the shape of a bird.
Like the Albanian flag.
The Albanian flag, and we coined it "flipping the bird."
Yes, which is very droll.
Which is very funny.
Yes.
And that was a huge political statement which UEFA and FIFA tried to keep separate from football, but sometimes these things get drawn in.
Yeah, and if anyone would like some more of the backstory on that, then I definitely recommend going and checking out that episode. If you scroll through the Who Watches the World Cup podcast listing, there will just be one called Switzerland, Serbia, Controversy or something like that. And we've got a lot of backstory on how this came to be, why this is an issue. But as we were recording the Group C episode the other day, we were watching Austria play North Macedonia, and I was saying, North Macedonia is very similar to Switzerland because they've got lots of these Albanian players that are now integrated into the country, and much like Switzerland has these Albanian descended players like Shaqiri and Granit Xhaka, who have now risen to prominence, North Macedonia's new generation of football player has the same thing. And we were talking about going, it's kind of an interesting similarity between Switzerland and North Macedonia here. And then as we watched North Macedonia play Austria, one of the Austrian players scored and started shouting. And we were watching the match, like, what's he shouting about here? Like, I can't remember I can never pronounce the player's name.
It was Marko Arnautovic.
Yes, and what was he doing at the end of that match, as much as you can remember?
Well, from what it turned out, that's the only time we've recorded a podcast while watching a game, and this happened to happen during this match.
Yeah.
And he obviously was fuming about something, very vocal, really just enraged. He didn't just do a celebration, he was just yelling his head off. And it was you that was saying that David Alaba looked like he was trying to shut him up, like put his hand over his on his face. And I was like, well, maybe they're just all really excited about the goal. And Arnautovic was angry about not being selected from the start. He came on as a substitute. But as it turned out, from what's come out since, that it was maybe a little bit more of an aggravated verbal assault on a couple of the North Macedonian players.
Yes, so it turns out the very players that he was shouting at were those North Macedonians with Albanian heritage, because Arnautovic himself has Serbian heritage. And this thing that we spoke about previously with two completely different countries, with Switzerland and Serbia, has reared itself again in the form of North Macedonia and Austria, which is kind of crazy. And immediately after the game, Arnautovic came out and declared, "I am not a racist," which is never a good start. "I have friends in almost every country and I stand for diversity." Well, clearly, that's not completely true if the first thing he did was come out and shout at the Albanian players when he scores a goal.
Presumably something about the fact that they were Albanian and he was Serbian.
Yes.
But then, as I'm sure you'll get into the finer details, but from what I saw, he's been suspended. He was suspended for the game against Holland last night. But nowhere in UEFA's thing did it say for being a racist.
Mm-hmm.
It just said for insulting
a player.
Yeah, which is confusing because insults between players happen every 5 to 10 seconds in a football match. Mm-hmm. So what did he say or do that got him a one-match suspension that's different from any other kind of banter between players? And why would they not specify why he gets suspended for what he said on the pitch and no one else ever does?
Yes, so immediately after the match, the FFM, which is the Football Federation of Macedonia, reported Arnautovic and went to UEFA and said, hello. They declared it a nationalistic outburst. It's a nationalistic outburst for two countries that are not on the football field, right? It's a Serb-Albanian fight on a North Macedonian Austrian pitch, but UEFA only suspended him for one match. And again, this is not just nationalism, it's ethnicity, right? It's ethnic Serbs and ethnic Albanians, for which there's a big difference, as we spoke about in great detail on the previous episode. And this is really confusing to me for why he's only been suspended for one match. Because here in England, we've seen a really big attempt with like the Kick It Out campaign, for example, to combat racism and discrimination against players based on their race and their ethnicity, right? And we've seen with the Black Lives Matter kneeling that the players have done, there have been boos in certain stadiums. And that has had huge coverage in the UK, where saying some fans are racist because they're booing the England players. And I'm not going to get into that at this stage because this is a different discussion. But UEFA and FIFA have tried to take a strong stance on racism. But it seems like if that racism is centered somewhere else, specifically between, say, the Serbs and Albanians, they're not willing to do anything about it. Now, if this had been a player using a literal racist phrase to Paul Pogba, Raheem Sterling, to a black player, that would have been gone. Like, they'd be out of the tournament and maybe banned from playing for their nation again. You would expect. And when in Bulgaria, there was the famous Bulgarian incident with the England team, with the Bulgarian fans being racist, and UEFA probably didn't go as far as they should have done. But that was a real thing. And with this kind of ethnic discrimination we are seeing here, as I said to you yesterday, this ethnic battle between going on here is literally the cause of the First World War. The First World War was caused by this very situation. And so to say that it doesn't warrant or only warrants a 1-game suspension. It warranted an entire fucking war in the early 20th century.
Yeah.
So why is it only worth a 1-game ban? And I don't understand. Because, again, it is an ethnic... It like, whether or the colour of their skin is not what determines their ethnicity in this case, right? And... I think, again, there's just UEFA have not been strong enough on racism towards black players, and here they're trying to soothe it to go, well, it's not even really a problem, right? But if I was Albanian, or if I was North Macedonian, or I was, then how was he going to be allowed to play in the next game? I don't get it.
No, and I guess it will come down to the Austrian the team management, whether they pick him.
Yeah,
it could be pretty volatile, whatever happens. But yeah, this brings to mind what you were saying about Black Lives Matter and UEFA and FIFA trying to stamp down on racism towards black players, and how that's been really prevalent in the news about racism around black players, but other kind of racism, like you're talking about, ethnic racism, is not really in the conversation. And
I think, sorry to interrupt, but we see that with the nations that don't kneel, for example. Like North Macedonia, we were watching the Denmark-Belgium game yesterday, and the Belgian players knelt for the Black Lives Matter thing, and the Danish players didn't, but they applauded the decision to kneel. But that, again, shows the different ways the different countries are dealing with these issues, especially around black players.
Yeah, sure, because the cultures will be different in every country, so you can accept that. You don't want to put this mandate on teams that say, we as UEFA want to really solidify this whole equal thing. At the bottom of the screen in every game it says we sign for equal whatever in football, and the kneeling for Black Lives Matter. You don't want UEFA to be like, you have to do this.
It's mandatory.
It's mandatory because then that kind of completely defeats the purpose. So it should be as it is, where each team can choose how they want to represent themselves, and that's absolutely fine. But the example that was brought to mind as you were talking about this was when Glenn Kamara, who actually plays for Finland in the Finnish national team, he plays for Rangers, and earlier on this season, Rangers were playing in the Europa League against the Czech side Slavia, and Glenn Kamara was racially abused on the pitch,
right,
and in the supposedly in the tunnel after the game, and the offending player, Andre Kudela, he was given a 10-match ban.
Yeah. As he should.
Yeah.
If that doesn't even seem like it's enough, but yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at the scenes that follow, like Kamara immediately responds, and he obviously gets really angry. I think he did get some disciplinary reaction for his response,
right?
Because in the rules of the game, even if someone racially abuses you, you can't push somebody or yell at them or
so he
start
acted
a physically
physically
So I think he got suspended for 3 games for his part in it. But so yeah, Black Lives Matter is a huge news story of the last year or two. So UEFA, on the wave of this movement, we've had a huge incident in the Europa League of racial abuse, so we're going to slap a 10-game ban on this guy.
Yeah.
Which actually, Glenn Kamara's lawyer called the barest minimum penalty.
Yeah.
And made a mockery of UEFA's claims on taking racism seriously.
Yeah.
So even though that sounds big, a 10-game ban, there's not many times that's been doled out before. Mm-hmm. On a human level, it's it's kind of pitiful. And then here we go in the Euros, one of the biggest stage in the world for football, and it's just like it's basically a slap on the wrist.
Yeah,
it's go sit in the corner and think about what you've done, but you can come back next time.
Yeah. I think this goes to show something about really does show a condemnation of UEFA, as we spoke about in the European Super League episode as well. With Steve, we were saying how quickly FIFA and UEFA acted against these billionaires wanting to form a European Super League. But they've taken such limited action on discrimination. They take such limited steps. It really highlights the farce, right? Where it's like, oh, you want to go and create your own Super League? Right, then we're going to stop your players from playing internationally. We're going to fine you. We're going to, take you to court. And then one of your players racially abuses somebody else, and it's like it's just a little.
Well, it doesn't affect them and their pockets.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one player's actions, and because it is outside of a global movement, no one in the rest of the world, the whole world is talking about Black Lives Matter, but no one is talking about Albanian and Serbian tensions.
Yeah.
So
well, not since the First World War. Yeah,
since the First World War, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like they're doling out punishment based on how loud the conversation is.
Yeah.
And how much they can get away with.
Yeah.
Taking back, like with the Super League, they can go, well, you're all billionaires, so we're going to fine you tons of money, but one player is like, well, what's going to make us look like we're taking this seriously? Well, even so, actually, if the thought process is what's going to make us look like we're taking this seriously, and they land on a 1-game suspension, you started this by saying it's confusing, and that doesn't make any sense.
No. He should immediately have, the minimum should be he's out for the tournament.
Yeah. And then they can maybe do a tribunal or some kind of, I don't know what you would call it, where after the tournament they'll sit down and look at it properly and go, okay, we need to figure out what the actual punishment should be for this. They take their time and wait till the tournament's over, but in the short term course should be, you're out. Because what kind of stance is it? They're putting equality shit on the screen before every game. Yeah. Half the teams are taking a knee before the match, and yet someone ethnically or racially abuses someone, and they're so inconsistent.
Yeah, it's infuriating, right? But it's infuriating in the same way that England went to Bulgaria, and then Bulgaria essentially faced no punishment for it, really.
I think comparatively, just some money.
Yeah, and it's like. It's incredibly frustrating. And again, I say it hasn't been taken seriously since the First World War, but that's not even true, because there's literal genocide that happened in the 20th century, and we spoke about the former Yugoslavian Republic of Macedonia and what that meant, and just I want to move on to the other controversy.
Oh, there's more. The
other controversy, equally as divisive. Cristiano Ronaldo moved those Coca-Cola bottles, didn't he?
Man.
This is the perfect thing for the discussion we've just been having that shows what UEFA really fucking cares about.
Yeah.
Because UEFA have threatened action if players move their sponsors' Coca-Cola or Heineken bottles from the press briefing. They're like, we'll take action against the federation countries if their players move Coca-Cola bottles, but if they racially abuse another player on the pitch, they'll miss a game.
What the fuck?
Right? Like, I love football. I love this tournament. I've loved this football so much, but I cannot stand this fucking hypocrisy. And I've upset the dogs. I'm sorry, Gus. I'm sorry. So Cristiano Ronaldo moved the Coca-Cola bottles.
Yes.
Then Paul Pogba moved the Heineken bottle, which they've said, Paul Pogba is Muslim, so it's understandable that he would move an alcohol bottle. He doesn't want to be associated with it. But Cristiano Ronaldo moved the Coca-Cola bottles and said, drink water, and they went Coca-Cola, like that.
Well, yeah, I watched the footage. He just kind of moves them out of the way, slides them along the desk, and then just holds a bottle of water and just says agua, as if to say, why would you drink that when this is the stuff? And anyone who knows Cristiano Ronaldo as a footballer, or if you've seen I don't know how many documentaries there are about him now, like he's so strict on what he puts into his body, and that's why he's still one of the best players in the world in his mid-30s, and hasn't retired like most other players at his age, or at least in previous generations gone by. So it's not out of character. And if say Ronaldo's religion is health, why can't he remove sugary drinks out of his periphery? Because it's his image that is being maybe tarnished is too strong a word, but
no. But again, then we come down to this is something again that we were speaking about off pod yesterday, was how FIFA are constantly trying to promote this the Euros is good because it inspires children to want to go outside and play football and be active and lead healthier lives, and we combat childhood obesity whilst being sponsored by Coca-Cola. And if one of the players moves the Coca-Cola bottles and says to drink water because it's healthier, we're going to fine them at the same time we're trying to combat childhood obesity. And the whole thing is a farce. It's all a farce. And this is, again, that going back to the European Super League, this is why the Super League was a good idea. Because it would have acted outside of the boundaries of these corrupt corporate motherfuckers, and at least the other corrupt corporate motherfuckers could have chosen who their sponsors were. We started a whole segment called Fuck Those Sponsors on this show, specifically for this reason. And now Cristiano Ronaldo is like, yeah, Coca-Cola, it ruins, it causes childhood diabetes.
Well, I don't know if we're putting words in his mouth. He hasn't said anything.
Well,
but it's amazing. It's amazing how much you can infer from that simple action.
Yes. And again, Manuel, I don't want to mispronounce his name, the Italian player, Manuel Locatelli?
Locatelli, yeah.
Yeah, he also replaced Coca-Cola with water the other day. So that's 3 players now that have moved sponsorships for the sake of saying the action says either I don't want to be associated with this, or literally in Cristiano Ronaldo's sake, this isn't healthy and I shouldn't be promoting this and we shouldn't be promoting this. And UEFA are like, yeah, we're going to fine you if you do that again.
Yeah, I mean, with Pogba as well, like obviously, as a practicing Muslim, it makes sense that he wants to remove a Heineken bottle from in front of him, even though it was 0%.
Oh, yeah, they can.
Which is another bullshit about how can a football tournament be sponsored by an alcohol-producing company? It's like, well, it's because we're advertising specifically as 0% alcohol products. Yeah. Well, you think no one's going to just put 2 and 2 together and go buy some Heineken? Uh-huh. It's ridiculous that anything should be sponsored at a football stadium that isn't conducive and in line with what that event is all about. So this is all about being at the peak of physical prowess and the greatest athletes in the world. All the sponsors should be about, hey kids, if you want to be as great as these, then you should eat healthy, drink healthy, exercise, and have a good mental health and all this kind of stuff that you don't see anywhere near anything UEFA or FIFA affiliated.
No. Or, as we can see from behind Cristiano Ronaldo in this image here, his sponsors here are Volkswagen, created by the Nazi Party, Heineken, the alcohol company, JustEatOrTakeaway.com, which is the other one that is there, Gazprom, the Russian gas giant owned by the Russian, partly owned by the Russian government that's trying to destabilise Eastern Europe and build the Nord 2 pipeline directly between Russia and Germany, Qatar Airways, owned by the Qatari government who use slave labour, TikTok and Alipay, both contributors to the Chinese government's control and near, if not genocide, against the Uyghur people, and TikTok deliberately cancelling down on free speech, but going, look, it's funny because they're dancing. FedEx, who famously stranded Tom Hanks on a desert island.
That's the worst you could maybe say about
I mean, FedEx. It's Tom Hanks, Dave.
He made it. He's fine. He made fire.
Vivo, again, a Chinese phone brand created by in some of the warehouses and the factories where the Chinese workers tried to commit suicide by jumping out of the window, so they built suicide nets to prevent them from dying rather than improving the labour conditions.
Well, I have something to say about the Volkswagen quickly.
Okay.
Let me just get it up before you go ahead.
Is this I'm being a little bit coy with the Nazi Party thing. As if I see someone driving a Volkswagen and I'm going to be like, you're supporting the Nazis by driving that Volkswagen. Yeah. That's obviously not the case.
Well, what you're saying about Volkswagen, obviously, yeah, maybe being related to the Nazi Party, and I mentioned before that they had all this controversy about their carbon emissions a few years ago, which may be why they're being so pushy with electric cars now. But we didn't talk about it before, but there was a Greenpeace protest before the Germany-France game. Yeah,
in Munich, right?
In Munich, where a parasailer who apparently wasn't supposed to land on the pitch, that was a bit of a fluke accident, but his parasail said, kick out the oil, and it had the Greenpeace logo on it. And a lot of the news coverage only picked up that it was, Greenpeace had claimed responsibility for this, and it was about oil. But no one's picking up on the fact that also on that parachute was the VW logo, but like dripping. So it was specifically aimed at UEFA's affiliation with Volkswagen for the damage they've done to the climate. So it's everything there at UEFA seems to be affiliated with, besides FedEx. And maybe what's the other one? Booking.com. Have you got a bad thing to say about Booking.com?
I'm sure there's something.
There's something. We haven't looked into it.
No.
But yeah, the vast majority of the companies they've chosen to sponsor them are abominable in one way or the other.
Yeah. But, Dave, I know Volkswagen has this long, sordid history, but they did open the tournament by driving a ball onto the pitch with a remote control car.
An adorable remote control car.
Yeah, with the VW logo on it, just to make sure you know that they're sponsored by VW. And then the ref had to pick it up and go, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
What is this?
What is the point of this? That was a real sad moment for football. It's already become so slabbed with corporate logos and sponsorships, but then to bring it onto the pitch, it almost seems the pitch almost should be a sacred space, with the temple of football. Don't drive a fucking electric VW on and to carry the ball onto the pitch.
And this again speaks to the response to what after Christian Eriksen collapsed. Because what we've seen now is the Danish team come out and say, and the Danish coach as well, say, UEFA essentially forced our hand into going back onto the pitch to continue playing. And the team and the manager have both said it was the best, worst choice that we had.
Yeah, the best of all the bad, the two bad choices UEFA gave them.
Yeah, UEFA didn't give them the chance to replay the game at a later date. They didn't give them the chance to seriously compose themselves. It was either go back on and finish the match, or you lose by default.
No, it was come back on and finish the match now, or you come back at noon tomorrow and finish the game.
Right.
To which the players and the coach were thinking, well, at that point, I think they didn't really know what was going on with Eriksen. So they're thinking, how the hell are we going to sleep tonight, knowing that we have to come back tomorrow and finish this game when we've just gone through all this?
Yeah.
So really, I think that I agree. They made the best out of two terrible decisions, and just to get the game over with. At least that then it's behind them,
done.
And they can recover, and obviously the Danish players refused to make a decision until they knew what was going on with Eriksen. That's why it was delayed by 2 hours or 3 hours, because they needed to know that he was okay. So I think they had video messages from him in hospital, conscious, speaking, seeming fairly normal and jovial, and thanking his teammates. But the Danish coach said that a number of the players were not in a condition to play.
Yeah.
And, how could they? And really, it was not a surprise that they didn't win that game or even get anything out of it. In Finland, we said that Finland did the honourable and respectable thing by playing
them
best.
respectfully.
Respectfully,
yeah.
And that's absolutely true. And I don't think Denmark would have accepted if Finland had half-arsed it.
Yeah.
Or like you said, in the 90th minute, just knocked in an equaliser into their own goal, so at least Denmark get a point out of it. Denmark wouldn't have wanted that.
Yeah.
So Finland did everything right. Really, it was UEFA that put them in a terrible position. And then what did happen is we watched Denmark play again yesterday against Belgium, and they were incredible.
They were really good. Yeah.
In that first half, how they came out and performed the way they did, and they completely blew Belgium out of the water. Belgium looked like they had no idea what was going on. They scored within 2 minutes because it was a defensive error at the back, but Belgium was shell-shocked, probably expecting that Denmark would be slow to get into the game. And there was that planned, on the 10th minute, it was planned that both teams would stop and applaud for a minute in respect to Christian Eriksen, which happened. But I wondered if Belgium were kind of just going, let's just get through this first 10 minutes, get this 10-minute thing out of the way, and then we'll play. Whereas Denmark came out and went, we're going to go at them straight away, and we're going to prove to our country and prove to Eriksen that, we're going to do this for them and for us and for him. And it was amazing. Yeah. Really amazing. And eventually, obviously, Belgium come into their own, and they show some of the quality that makes them the number one ranked team in the world, and they deserved to win in the end. They were the better team. But that first half of Denmark was incredible, amazing, emotional kind of part of this whole tournament, which has been kind of staggering as far as tournaments go.
Yeah, and I think that kind of talks to this problem that we're having as the more we watch this, which is the football is great and football is special, and has helped a lot of people get through, and looking forward to this tournament has helped a lot of people get through the last year. But it is controlled by this higher body, by UEFA and by FIFA, who are contemptible. And whether it be these issues of race, where they have not done enough to protect black players, and then when there's a different form of racism, or in the case of this Serbian Albanian issue, which has reared its head again,
at the very next tournament.
Yeah, they have not done enough for that. The sponsors that they choose are quite frankly disgusting. Apologies to Just Eat for lumping you in there with these other ones, but my discounted kebab is not quite as important as literal genocide. So
yeah, I was wanting to look up. You reminded me about the Albania stuff from the World Cup, and I wondered, well, if we've seen Arnautovic get suspended for a game, what did they do to Shaqiri and Xhaka at the World Cup? Because I'd forgotten. And they didn't even get a suspension, they just got fined.
I remember they got fined, and the Swiss fans chipped in to pay for their fine.
They started like a just giving or GoFundMe, but then UEFA refused to accept it because the whole point was that they should. So it was like 10,000 Swiss francs each, and Steiner, who was also one of the other Swiss players involved, but not as much, was fined 5,000 francs. But yeah, they've gone a completely different tack this time. They've just gone for a 1-game suspension. But I was going to say,
a 1-game suspension for a player who came off the bench is ridiculous, right?
So he's obviously not even the first choice anyway.
Yeah, clearly. So if you have a 5-match ban on Cristiano Ronaldo, for example, that's potentially Portugal's entire tournament.
Yeah.
But a 1-match ban for a player who came off the bench is like, well, he barely played that one.
Yeah. So dumb. We spoke about, with regards to UEFA off pod, we talked about UEFA saying they will fine the football associations if their players remove bottles from the press conferences. And I think it was going to be like 15,000 euros or whatever was maybe a number thrown out, if I've not pulled that out of my arse. But then we said, look, well, that's not a lot of money.
No. So
the football associations and the management for each country could say to their players, look, we're going to get in trouble if you keep doing this. And then, whatever this number is, this figure is, unless it's millions, the footballers themselves are going to be like, well, to be fair, I value my principles higher than 15,000 euros. So I'll do it. And then when UEFA fine you, French FA or Portuguese FA, send me the bill and I'll pay for it, because I will happily pay that, because I'm on 500 grand a week, 300 grand a week.
Yeah.
It's stupid. And there's so many times where, and all kinds of different controversies within football, whether it's match fixing or doping or racism or more like physically violent moments on the pitch, and they dole out fines. Like, you're talking to footballers who earn millions and millions of pounds or euros a week, and you're finding them stuff that they can pull out of their pocket. They might just have it as spare change. So what really are you gaining from it? You're not really disciplining them. You're not hurting them in any way that's actually going to change their behaviour. All you're doing is, taking a little bit of cash to put into the kitty.
All they're doing is replacing the money that they've lost from the sponsors by taking that money from the players themselves.
Yeah, because ultimately all they really care about is getting paid.
Yeah.
So wherever it comes from, of what we've just been talking about, is wherever it comes from, they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. Because, it would be so easy for them to, if discipline was what they actually wanted to do, to hurt the players and stop them from doing it. Like you just said, if moving a sponsored drinks bottle seems shitty, but say for the sake of a hypothetical, Cristiano Ronaldo says something racist to a player, and they go, okay, well, we are going to fine you more than 15,000 euros because you're Ronaldo, and also, you're banned for the rest of the tournament, and maybe you're not allowed to play an international tournament ever again. That is huge, especially if if you're Portugal, that's actual discipline, not just, it's like, if a child has misbehaved, you don't just take away one of their toys that maybe they don't even like that much, that they'll be a bit of a whingy about it and then they'll forget. You do something that they're actually going to learn from.
No, you're right. And that's the thing with these these incidents of racism. And another at the club level, why fan ownership is so important. Because if clubs are fan owned and the fans act in a racist way, whether it be abuse or whatever it might be, because the club is owned by the fans, the club is directly responsible. And the fans are directly responsible because they have ownership in the club. So when you punish the club for what the fans are doing, it's a direct punishment on the fans. Because the fans aren't, it's not owned by some person in Tampa Bay, Florida, or on Wall Street or something. It's owned by, say, the people of Manchester. And if the people of Manchester are racist, well, then you punish the people of Manchester by punishing the team. Act in a different way, because this is not acceptable. And it's the same with the nation. Exactly as you say. If they look into this case with the Austrian player, and I'm going to mispronounce his name again, Arnautovic, is that right?
Arnautovic.
No, thank you. If they look into this and find out that he was racist, essentially racist, he should not be allowed to play for his country again, ever. That should be it.
But then, like, a player in the Europa League misses 10 games and then he's back.
It should be a season, at least a season back.
Yeah, and again, if he's
least.
it should be, and it should be. Remember when Eric Cantona karate kicked a fan?
Yeah,
like he was gone. Like that was like, we're not going to take this lightly. You're out for the rest of I think it was like 6 to 8 months or something. Like it's like that actually is going to hurt him and it's going to hurt his team. Whereas this is not hurting anyone to any real effect.
No,
which is it's so dumb. Especially as we were just talking about how UEFA only really care about their sponsors. So banding out these little kind of pitiful fines against these players doesn't really even help them much.
No, and especially when we come to something like Pride Month, which we're currently in now, where what you see with Pride Month that drives me up the fucking wall is when you see all of the corporations changing their logos to have LGBT colours on it. To be like, we're Disney and we support Pride Month. It's like, well, good for you, Disney. What are you doing about it? Right? If you support the LGBT community and are trying to fight against discrimination, what they'll do is they'll bring out a new line of Disney princesses, but they're all wearing rainbow dresses, so that they can capitalise on the inclusion of Pride Month, right? And that's what we see with UEFA, and what's so disgusting about it. And in some ways, the NBA is very much guilty of this as well, where the NBA will say, we back our black players in their protests, in the BLM protests, which was different to the NFL, where Colin Kaepernick was knelt, and then the NFL didn't know what to do because the majority of his fan base was white. And like, well, we don't know what to do about this, and Trump was being Trump. But the NBA said, the vast majority of our players are black. The vast majority of our fan base are black. And the vast majority of our sponsors are advertising to black players in this instance. So we do support our players because it works, right? With everything else connected. We can stick to our principles here. But when it came to Hong Kong, the general manager of the Houston Rockets in the NBA said, we should support democracy in Hong Kong. The NBA shut them down because the Chinese fans, the Chinese Basketball Association said we're going to broadcast another NBA game at all until this is dealt with. And so that's gone. So the NBA could turn around and say, yes, we supported our black players. We supported our black viewers. But did they support the people in Hong Kong, in Xinjiang, in their biggest market? No, because it's their biggest market. So they can say at home, yeah, we did what we had to do. But when it came to the international ramifications, they're willing to let these things slide. And UEFA is exactly the same thing. Equality. We're going to stick it on our screen. Look, our players are kneeling, and if you boo that, you're a bad person. But we are, meanwhile, also sponsored by TikTok. And we're sponsored by Alipay.
Yeah,
and we're sponsored by Gazprom. And we're sponsored, we believe in trying to make a better world for tomorrow by fighting climate change, but we are sponsored by Volkswagen. And it's a joke. It is a joke. And it is unbelievable to me that the one person that I respect in this entire situation is Cristiano Ronaldo.
The one person you previously hated the most.
Because, you know how I feel about Cristiano Ronaldo. On that pitch, talented as he is, he can go fuck himself. But when he brings that stubborn dickhead nature into that room, and that same nature that causes him to be a fucker on the pitch, when he comes out and he angles that same energy towards the right person, I'm like, yeah! Yes, Cristiano Ronaldo, you move those Coke bottles. And if that is the biggest protest we're going to get against the actions of UEFA, is the moving of Coke bottles.
Well, and the fucking paraglider, which was not talked about.
No, not at all.
Not talked about. They tried to bury that completely, but it still got out.
Yeah.
But so there have been protests against these things, and what else could come? Who knows?
I want Cristiano Ronaldo on a hang glider into Serbia. And he's
flipping the bird.
He's flipping the bird. No, because that's discrimination against the Serbs, and that's no better than the other way around. And I think maybe that's something that which might lead us to look at the Xhaka thing from the World Cup a little bit differently from when we spoke about it last time. Was we spoke about how it was deliberately inflammatory.
Yeah.
Right. And the only difference was it was to the fans. It wasn't to another player. They didn't turn around to Serbian players and start doing it. They went up to the fans to do it. And maybe if it had been to other players, it would. I don't know if because again it was a symbol. They didn't turn around and go, "That's for genocide," or something like that.
It was more of a supportive, but you'd think it would be a supportive thing, but they did it to the opposing fans. Whereas if they went up to the faces of the opposing players, maybe that would have been a whole different thing, because then you're inviting recompense, and the opposing players are probably going to be like, "Don't you fucking do that to me!" And they're like, "Oh, do argy bargy, don't you fucking, and it becomes a fracas.
Yeah. So this has ended up being the controversy episode, and I'm glad that we got one, and I'm glad that we gave ourselves the space to get into it, because we've been able to watch a lot of this and record a lot of this in person, but I'm leaving today, so we might not have a chance to record some more. But I'm really glad that we had a chance to get into those things that we've been speaking about off pod and just really nail it down, because it is that thing where we have loved watching the football for the last week, but every time it comes to halftime and they're like, the Euros 2020 sponsored by Alipay, what do? And if that doesn't end up on the pod, then we're not honestly sharing our experience about what it's been like to watch. And it has been, again, amazing football. And North Macedonia, we've said, but I'm sure when we get to I imagine now, the losers talk, North Macedonia have earned our respect, and Denmark have been absolutely, like, literal Vikings. Like, out there fought like warriors.
And Wales have been absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, it has been an amazing week of football. But it wouldn't be an episode of Who Watches the World Cup if we didn't highlight that the football isn't everything.
Yeah.
And this is the lie of when people say black players kneeling for the Black Lives Matter thing isn't political, because it is inherently political. The whole action is inherently political because we bring those things onto the pitch. And it being political is not a bad thing. Right? When someone says, "Oh, kneeling isn't political," they're trying to say that they're not trying to bring an outside influence, a negative influence onto the pitch. But it being a political, it's like saying that the players at the Mexico Olympics raising their fists isn't political. Like, of course it was. That was the definition of it. It is a political act. But that doesn't mean that the political act is a negative act. Right? Those two things have become synonymous because politics is dirty. And granted, as I said in the introduction, right, it's a sordid, disgusting thing of the rich and the upper class trying to control the people below them. And that could be classism, it can be sexism, it can be racism. And what we see with UEFA is what happens when you have a political sporting body, right? And UEFA is just another government. And when you kneel, and you are a player kneeling, you're not just kneeling to highlight your society, it's a deliberate affront to UEFA. Because they'll say that they're supporting equal rights, and meanwhile, they couldn't give a shit. So...
And really obviously, it's so blatant they don't give a shit, and it's so bizarre that nothing is being done.
Yeah.
Because but then who is there that can step in and go, UEFA are being awfully contradictory, and there are spatterings of corruption here. Maybe us, this imaginary body that I've just come up with, whose job it is to regulate sporting governments, should just have a look. Because even though when FIFA, there was all this stuff about FIFA and Sepp Blatter and everything, that was all uncovered, and he was corrupt, and FIFA was corrupt. But what happened? I don't know. Nothing. There was still World Cups, and there was still all the football still went on, even though the body that organises it and decides where the tournaments are going to be played are. We know that they're corrupt. We talk about it. Everyone talks about it all the time. Why does everything just carry on as if nothing's happening?
Mm. And the only person who's trying to do something is a Portuguese man who was tried for tax evasion. So he's not exactly a beacon of hope.
But I don't know. I'm with him. I hope he keeps doing it.
Yeah.
And I hope that instead of Paul Pogba and Locatelli and Ronaldo being kind of outcast.
Yeah.
I hope that the rest of the rest of the footballers go, no, actually, they weren't even really planning on it. Like Pogba did it very subtly, he just didn't want it, whereas Ronaldo made a bit more of a show of it. But they were just being principled. Then it says they just would rather not.
Yeah.
And I would hope more players fall in line and go, no, I don't. Pogba is sponsored by Pepsi, so I'm surprised he didn't move the Coke bottles too. Mm. Or just pull out a Pepsi bottle to put it next to the Coke bottle and be like, both colas are available.
Yeah.
You know? So that would be great. That's what I'm rooting. I'm rooting for press conferences from here on out to be a stance of unity among the players to go, actually, I don't recognise these companies as in line with my principles and my image, so I'm just going to remove them from the frame of which your cameras are going to catch me. And all the signs behind me I can't do anything about, and all the rest of the desk is covered in Coke bottles, and the managers aren't going to move it, and
if I was a Ukrainian player forced to stand in front of a Gazprom sign, I would be spitting at it. You can't separate the politics from the sport. And as much as people on Twitter want to say, oh, I wish that black players wouldn't bring this politics into the sport, you're talking nonsense, because you can't separate it. You can't. And you especially can't separate it at an international tournament. Mm. Oh, I just want to watch all these countries play each other, and then when we beat Germany, I could say, 2 world wars, but I don't want politics in my football. Fuck off. Fuck off and get on board. Join the revolution, my brothers. Because this needs to end. And so does the pod, because this has gone on for ages.
But we still want to watch the football.
Oh yeah, the football's great. And join us for Group E, because that's also going to be a good conversation. Pimp hat away!
Wow.